Hello YouTube! Please make it stop! As you can hear, today we are talking about Nirnroot, and specifically where that annoying sound comes from it produces and where that glow comes from it produces, and I will also go over a lot of Nirnroot lore in general, of course. I hope you guys will find it as interesting as I found it, and yeah, just without much further ado, let's just immediately kick off with this, in my opinion, very interesting video. So first, a little bit of lore behind the plant itself. This little plant has been a staple of the Elder Scrolls series since Oblivion, and is a pretty rare find on Tamriel. However, if you want to find some Nirnroot, all you need to do is keep your ears open for the sound and eyes open for the luminescent glow. Nirnroot is usually found near sources of water, indicating that they can most easily survive when water is in abundance to them. However, it is so rare that alchemists sometimes seem to think that it's going extinct. Nevertheless, Nirnroot has so far survived on, and I would not be surprised if we see it in the next Elder Scrolls game too. Now, nobody really knows where Nirnroot came from, but some say it originated in Valenwood and its seeds got carried across the majority of Tamriel by birds. But it's said that they were in great abundance in the past. The master on everything Nirnroot, a man named Sindarian that we can find in Oblivion and we can find his corpse in Skyrim, theorizes that the Nirnroot were radically changed back in the First Era after an event called the Sun's Death, which was an eruption from the Red Mountain, whose ash made it so that there was a lack of sunlight for almost a year. He says that Nirnroot was one of the first few plants during this time that was able to adapt itself, to live on without much light, which explains why we can find Nirnroot even in very dimly lighted places. It is said that back in the First Era, Nirnroot had yellow leaves instead of green leaves, but that after its adaptation into the darkness, it had transformed to have greenish leaves, indicating that its reactions inside had changed so much to adapt itself to the darkened environment that the plant itself also changed color. Many scholars seem to dispute this theory, but Sindarian notes that before the Sun's Death event there had never been a sighting of Nirnroot in any dimly lit places like caverns. This only started happening after the Sun's Death event and the subsequent change of color of the plant itself. Sindarian thinks that volcanic ash, which is full of minerals, is now the primary source for the Nirnroot's energy. He says that the reason for the slow extinction of Nirnroot is that the volcanic ash from the Sun's Death were slowly disappearing from Tamriel's soil by the Third Era. After so many years, most of it is used up. It's pretty simple. And thus it would explain why Nirnroot appears less and less in the Third Era. But now, after the Red Year, which was in the beginning of the Fourth Era, which was another eruption of Red Mountain, there's presumably much more volcanic ash again in Tamriel, which explains why we can see Nirnroot in Skyrim in relative abundance, if Syrian's hypothesis is correct, of course. We know that the environment where Nirnroot grows has a significant effect on its appearance. When the environment is significantly different from regular environments, one will see significant changes in the Nirnroot itself as well. We get two great examples of this in the Elder Scrolls V, where we can find two special types of Nirnroot. The first type is one that I'm sure all of you have seen, or at least heard about. The Crimson Nirnroot. It is a red type of Nirnroot, and it presumably evolved from the regular Nirnroot growing in Blackreach, or other subterranean complexes. But we only see it ever growing in the natural environment in Blackreach. Just like its normal counterpart, it is very dependent on water, but it has evolved to such a point where it can grow next to the giant fungi of Blackreach and more or less steal water from the giant mushroom rather than needing to grow next to a body of water. This is all in a sort of symbiotic relationship with the giant fungi. And well, it's actually a superior kind of Nirnroot in that aspect, since they are no longer dependent on pools of water, but they're still dependent on other plants or fungi. The weird chiming sound that the plant makes has also evolved in the red type of Nirnroot. It's a slightly different sound from their regular green cousins, and according to Sindarian, the man that has researched the red Nirnroot the most, the red Nirnroot has a vastly shortened lifespan compared to their green colored cousins. It has similar properties to its green cousins, however some properties in this plant are significantly stronger. The interesting thing is that this species of Nirnroot already appeared in an earlier age on Tamriel. During the Second Era, in the Mabruk Mages Guild Hall, it seems like the mages have been able to grow Crimson Nirnroot. But it has no explanation given as to how it got there, where they found it, or how they even keep it alive, since it apparently has a very short lifespan. But this indicates that the Mages Guild already knew about Crimson Nirnroot in the Second Era, but somehow forgot about it again in the Third Era, since Sindarian thought that he discovered it later, well, after he got a rare red sample of Nirnroot from some adventurer. So there's a little bit of a, well, contradiction there. But anyway, I think the knowledge of the Crimson Nirnroot just was lost over the ages, and then Sindarian, with the help of the adventurer, rediscovered it. The second type of Nirnroot that we can find in the Elder Scrolls V is Giant Nirnroot. This species of Nirnroot not many people know about, and I am sure that it won't be really classified as a separate species. However, it is unique and can be found on an isolated island north of Solstheim, protected by some Spriggans. The reason that we can find this gigantic spawn of Nirnroot here is presumably because of the abundance of volcanic ash, and because it's near Solstheim, and the water near the small island. Another big factor could be the undisturbed location. It seems that only very recently some alchemists tried to reach the island, only then to be killed by the Spriggans on the island. But other than that, it seems like the island has been in, well, isolation for many years. This isolation plus the optimal conditions for the Nirnroot to grow, well, that probably resulted in some staggering big Nirnroots that, when harvested, yield 3 Nirnroot. It's probably just a fun Easter egg, but I like analyzing fun Easter eggs. So now, onto the main question of this video. The thing that fascinates me most. How do they produce that sound, and how do they produce their glow? Well, let's start with the glow, as that is probably the easiest one to answer. The answer to that can be found in 2 ways. One is just, it's a magical plant, deal with it. The other is to find out how it would actually be possible if Nirnroot was a real plant in our own universe, how it would be able to glow. Let's look at that second one, because I like complicated things. Glowing plants are nothing new. In our own world we have some plants that glow, although most of it are mushrooms or fungi, and that's not really the same as a plant, but let's just keep it at plants for this video. This is called being bioluminescent, and I absolutely butchered that word with my pronunciation. How it was possible that these plants emitted a glow was basically a mystery until 2015, when researchers found out that they use a special little material called luciferin, which is a very complicated material that causes for a chemical reaction in the plant that, combined with oxygen and the needed enzymes, which are the catalyzers or just the activators of the reaction, emit light, if those are all combined in the plant. Now, this is all pretty complicated, and this stuff called luciferin has many forms. Some forms appear in the mushrooms that glow, and other forms appear in, for example, animals or insects that glow, like fireflies. Each species that glows makes their own luciferin, which, with their own enzymes, causes for a pretty amazing reaction that emits the glow of that species. Now, most mushrooms in our own universe use the glow to attract insects in the dark. Perhaps Nirnroot has a similar purpose for it, but we don't honestly quite know what kind of useful purpose the glowing has to the Nirnroot. Perhaps, which is just my theory, this glow is just a way to lose a surplus of energy that it has, if it even has a surplus of energy. Which also would explain the sound it produces, but I'll get to that later. Because sound is another complicated thing to explain in plants. Are there any plants in our own universe that produce sound? And more importantly, sound that's at least intentionally made, because something like the chemical reactions inside the plant that keep it alive of course produce sound, but it's really, well, not that loud. Well, the answer is kinda. Let me explain. In a 2012 study by Monica Gagliano, she and her other researchers covered the topic of bioacoustics among plants. It turns out that plants can produce vibrations, which in fact are sound waves, that in some plants can be vibrations up until 300 Hz, which is far below what the human ear can hear. However, other plants can hear it, because in her research Gagliano discovered that some plants grow towards other plants, even when there's no other means of communication between the plants or other detection other than these vibrations. Meaning that, very simplified, plants can in a way speak and hear. Please, however, if you're interested in this, read the research yourself, as I really oversimplified this because this is a lore video and not a biology video. It's really interesting, but oversimplified by me to keep it interesting for you guys. I will put links to some of the research in the description so you can check the full thing out yourself if you're interested, as I do not want to be accused of mischaracterizing scientific evidence, since this is very oversimplified, my explanation of it. But if we go out from this, it means that Nirnroot probably also produces these kind of vibrations, but then with a much higher frequency so we can actually hear them. Again, we don't know what purpose this really hard vibration has that produces the sound that's so intense that we can hear it. But my personal hypothesis is, just like with the glow, Nirnroot uses this as a way to dispose of a surplus of energy in the plant. I have no idea as to how or why it would have so much energy in it, but in a way it would make a lot of sense if the Nirnroot has a lot of surplus energy, since these effects that the Nirnroot has in alchemy are really strong, meaning that the plant has a lot of magical potential, which potentially comes from the huge abundance of energy within the plant itself. So it would make sense if there's a lot of energy within the plant, and maybe if the plant has to dispose of that energy, which would explain the vibrations and the sound, since I can really see no other reason why it would produce a glow and would produce vibrations so hard that we can hear them. But honestly, that's most that I can say about Nirnroot. Now, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel if you want to hear more about Elder Scrolls lore in general, or want to see more of these kind of weird analyzing videos. And if you want personal contact with me, there's my Discord and Instagram in the description. Also in the description is my Patreon if you want to support me in a more personal way. You'll get your name at the end of every video, some minor bonuses, and you'll get to be at my live lore lectures for more explanation on that. Watch other videos where I explain it. And with that said, I hope to see you all in the next lore video. I will see you all later.